So in the last video we had created a page which will list all the basic information about the user within this user profile page, and also all the properties that the user has created. Alright, so apart from this we also want to show in another icon to mark this property as sold. Okay, and we only want to show this icon only for those users who has created that property and not for any other users. Okay, so of course no, not any other user can mark somebody else's property as like sold. Okay, so we can also replace this save property button over here, which would not make any sense, because why would a user want to save his or her own property, right? So we can just replace this and put that button over there, and along with that we can also show in another button where the user can edit the property. Okay, so we will do the editing property in the next video, and for this video we can just create a button and create a server action such that when we click on this button it should mark this property as sold. Okay, and once this property is marked as sold, we will not be seeing that property within our properties list. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with this. So now if I go to the property cards component, which is actually responsible to render this particular card either on a horizontal layout or the vertical layout depending on the prop that we pass. So what we also want to do is we have the save property component, right, where we are actually passing in the property, and then when we click on that button it will save the property, it will make an action to save the property. So we also want to add another action such that the user should be able to mark the property as sold. Okay, so if I just navigate into this component, so we need to render this component conditionally. So whichever the user which is logged in is the owner of the property, we want to show in a different button, that is a button to mark that property as sold. Otherwise, if the user is not the owner, then we want to show in this button which is to save the property. Okay, and also we will also be adding another button to edit the property, and that will only be visible to the owner of the property. Okay, so let us now create a variable to check if the property is the user's property or not. So we can just put in another variable right below this is property saved, called as is property owner. Okay, and just set this to, we need to check if the logged in user is the owner of the property. So how do we get that? So we get that from the session.user.id. okay, and if this id matches the property id, so that is from the property.owner id. okay, and this is giving me an error because this session can either be defined or undefined, so we can just put in a check over here. So if there is a session, only then do this comparison. Okay, so we need to convert this to a number. Okay, so this will return us the true or false value if the logged in user is the owner of the property. So we can just now conditionally render this particular button over here to either show the edit icon or the save icon. Okay, I mean the edit icon as well as the button to mark as sold. Okay, so to create the button to mark as sold, let us create a state right at the top to check if the property is sold or not. So by default the value will be coming from the property.isSold value. Okay, so let's create that variable. So is sold, set is sold, and set this equal to use state, and this is by default going to have a value of property.isSold. okay, so remember we have already created this particular property within our schema. Okay, so this will hold true or false values. So by default this is the type of this is going to be a boolean. Alright, and now we can just use this variable, and later we will be creating an action to mark the property as sold when we click on that button. Okay, so for now let's conditionally render this. So now I want to render few contents conditionally. Okay, few buttons basically. So based on this property called is property owner and the property of is sold. Okay, so now what I can just do is I can just cut this to my clipboard, and I can just check for the property of is property owner. So if that is true, I want to return something else, okay, so to return something else, so if the logged in user is not the property owner, then we just want to show in this button over here which I just copied, and inside this is property owner, then I can just put in some content over here. So inside this I can just put in a button to edit the property. So every property owner should be able to edit only their own properties. So I can just use a float button over here, just as I used over here. So what I can just do is I can just copy this piece of code, okay, and then paste in over here, and I can just replace some contents of this. So we can just replace the icon with probably something like edit outlined, okay. So you can just choose anything from design icon, so or whichever package you are using. So so it seems to be suitable for this icon, where the user clicks on it should be able to edit the property, and probably will be taken to a new page where the user can only edit that particular property. And we have the style. So for the style we have given the position of absolute so that it can stay at the top right, and I've given the top spacing as 10 and for the right 20. So I just want this button to be stay at the bottom, so I can just push this even more down to maybe 60, and let's get rid of this on click for now, and later we'll be handling the functionality. When the user clicks on this button, it should probably take the user back to the edit page. All right, so after that we can now check the property of is sold, okay. So we want to show that particular button right above the edit property, okay. So we can just also render that conditionally within this particular block. So I can just go right below this float button and put in an expression saying that if is sold, then I just want to do something else, open another bracket. So if it is sold, then again I want to show this button over here, okay, and this time the icon is going to be like check circled outline. So this is just like a check with a circle, just to indicate that this is going to be a sold property, just to indicate the user that to mark this property as sold. And after this also let's give the style. So this time it's going to be a right of just 15, okay. And you can just modify this based on however you want to place the buttons in your design card. So once we have done this, we can now go to the else block. So if the property is not sold, then we can show in a button to activate the property, okay. So again I can just copy this, and right over here I can just change this to filled, okay. So actually if it is sold, we want to show the filled icon, okay, and then for the if it is not sold, we want to show the outlined, okay. So you can also hover on this, it will give the actual icon. So this is the icon which we'll be using, and this also will be having the same style as this, okay. So this is I hope you understood the logic. So let me just explain you once again. So if the property owner value is true, okay, so we render the edit button, okay. So the irrespective of whether the value of is sold is true or false, okay, and then we render this sold property button conditionally, okay. So if it is the property is already sold, then we want to show in a filled icon, and when we click on this icon, it should activate the property, which we haven't implemented the functionality yet. And if the property is not sold, then we can just put in a button to prompt the user, like when we click on this, the property will be marked as sold. All right, let's also give it a tool tip, like we can just wrap this so that when the user hovers on this, will understand what exactly this button does. So let's wrap this within the design tooltip, all right, and give this a title of edit property, all right, and let's wrap our float button inside that. All right, so let's do the same for the others as well. So we can just say mark as sold, all right, and also over here activate property, all right, and okay, and finally for the save icon, okay. So actually I should have done this before, I just forgot about that. So we can just say this save property, all right, and let's wrap this up, okay. So once we save that, we can now have a look. So there we go. So we have the two buttons, one is to edit the property. So also if I hover on that, it will give us a tooltip edit property, and also to activate property. So this should be marked as red, so maybe the logic went wrong. Let us let us switch these two. All right, so this should be mark as sold. Yeah, okay. So now if I go to the properties page, so I should only be able to see only these two properties that I created as the owner of the property. Okay, so you see that for all other properties I see the save property icon. Okay, and only for my listed properties I cannot save the property, but I can mark that as sold or either edit that. Okay, so for now if I just click on these buttons, nothing actually happens. So we need to implement the functionality such that if I click on this edit button, it should navigate us to the edit page, and also if I click on this button, it should mark the property as sold. Okay, so the edit part will be doing in the next video. So for now let's create a server action such that when you click on this button, it should update the database property of this property to from false to true. Okay, so the value of is sold. So let us go ahead and do that. So within the actions file, we can just create another action to mark the property as sold. So we need to just check if the property is already sold, then we want to activate that property. Else if the property is already activated, we want to mark that as sold. Okay, so we just want to use this like a toggle switch. Okay, so let us create that function. So let us call this toggle property sold. Alright, so this is going to take in the property ID. Okay, so to get the property based on the ID. Okay, so this is going to be of type number. So let's open a try catch. Okay, so this should be toggle, and inside this try block we are going to first grab the response of the property, we can say, and set this equal to await db dot property dot find one or find unique. So we need to now pass in the property ID within the where clause. So where ID is coming from the arguments, that is property ID. And so now we have got the property based on the ID. So we need to check if this property is already sold or not. Okay, so let's check for that. So let's call this property already sold or something like this. Okay, and set this to this property. Okay, dot is sold value. Okay, so this will have a property is sold which is going to be of type boolean, and we need to check if this is a true value or false. So we just need to update that particular property. Okay, based on this. So if it is already sold, we want to activate that. So if it is activated, we want to mark that as sold. Okay, so let us store the response in like updated property. Alright, and now we just want to await on the db dot property dot, this time it is update. Okay, to update a existing record within our database. So we just want to now pass in the where the, of course, the ID, which is the property ID, and property ID, and now we just want to pass in the data of what we want to update. Okay, so within this data we now need to toggle the property of is sold. Okay, so now we just need to check if this value is true or false. So that we have already checked from this property is already sold, so we can just put the not operator and then paste in the value over there. Okay, so if it is sold, it will be marked as unsold. Okay, so basically it's like true. If it is true, then it will mark it as false, or this vice versa. All right, so let us finally return the response or the updated property. Okay, and if there's any error, we can just console log it saying that failed to update property. Okay, and now let us finally export this function. So that is toggle property sold, and now we can just now go back to the save property, or maybe you can call this file another name like icons or something like that. So we can now go right at the top. So we can create a function to toggle the property sold value. So let's create an async function. So we can call this handle toggle property sold. okay, and this is of course going to take in the property ID, alright, which is going to be of type number. Okay, so inside this function we are now going to open a try catch, and so I don't think we need the updated property. So what we can just do is we can just return a just a string saying that if the property is already sold, since it will already be toggled, right? So if that is property is already sold, so now it is unsold, so we just want to say in a message that property marked as unsold or property activated. Alright, else we just want to say property marked as sold. Okay, alright, so we can now use this particular response to show the flash message like whether the property is sold or unsold. So we can now store within that variable, let's say status or response, and set this equal to await and import the server action, that is toggle property sold, and now we just need to pass in the property ID. Okay, so now once we get the response, we can show the message of whatever we are getting within the response. So let's import show message, okay, and pass in the response and then the status of success. So it says that response could either be in the form of a string or it could also be undefined. Okay, so to get rid of this TypeScript error, we can just put in a type guard over here saying that if there is a response, then only we are going to show this message over here. Okay, and with the success variant, and if there is any error, let us show the message over here saying that something went wrong or we couldn't perform this action. So we can say error uh, marking or error updating the property status. Alright, so let's call this function whenever we click on the mark as sold button or mark as activate. Okay, so I'm just going to put in an on click handler and call a function that is handle toggle toggle property sold, and then pass in the property ID. Okay, so you get that from property.id. Okay, and also let's do the same for this button as well. Okay, so to mark as sold, so any of these buttons will do the same functionality. So now if I save this and go back to the application, so now if I click on this button, so this should mark the property as sold. Okay, so there we go, so the property is marked as sold. So we can just also verify this within our database. So I can just open MySQL workbench, and so now if I make a query on the property, so the property that I just created, and if I just check the property of is sold, you see that this property which I marked as sold is now made as true. Okay, so all the other values are false. So basically 0 means false and 1 means true. All right, so this feature is actually working. So now again, you see, even if I try to refresh this, so this should be change the message to activate property. So this property says marked as sold. So again, if I click on this, so this should be toggled. Okay, so if I click on that, so now it says property activated, and it changes the state from activate property to mark as sold whenever we click on this button. Okay, so again, if we make a verification within our table, so I'll just make a query again, and yeah, so we see that again the property of is sold is back to false. Okay, so this is the feature how we can mark the property as sold, or to activate the property if we want to come back again and show this property. So also within the properties page, since I am the owner of these properties, so I have different icons, like one is to edit property and also to mark as sold, and those properties that are not mine, I have just one icon to save the property or unsave the property. Okay, so also if I just click on this for this test property mark as sold, so you see that now the property is marked as sold, but this property, if I just refresh, you see that I no longer see that property. Okay, so that means that that property is marked as sold, so it would not make any sense to show that property over here. So in the next video, let us work on the feature where the user can edit the property. Okay, so let's move on to the next video.